Hey folks, Lenny Lawson, the car guru. I am back in action. Oh, you've been gone? Yes, I have been gone. Those of you who listen to the radio broadcast have noticed maybe a few reruns. I hope they didn't rerun back to back the same show. Sometimes I just don't know what they're going to do when I go out of town. But yeah, I went on a cruise with my wife. We typically go on a cruise in January, and that's what we did. This one left out of Port Canaveral. That was kind of cool, being beside where they're getting ready to launch that moon mission. I could see the tower. It was very small, very far off in the distance, but I could see it if I zoomed in with my iPhone. But it left out of Port Canaveral and then went to a private island that's owned, I guess it's owned by the cruise lines, which is Norwegian Cruise Lines. Very happy with that experience. The ship was phenomenal. It's not one of the giant ships. It has, I think, just a little under 4,000 passengers. That's a lot of folks. And about 1,600 crew. We parked beside a ship, though, that dwarfed ours. And I looked it up. I can't remember the name it was MSC Cruise Lines. And I think the name of the ship was Seascape or something like that. But anyway, it has 7,000 passengers and I think 2,000 crew or a little bit more. Do you believe that? I just have a hard time believing that something that big can float. Of course, I have a hard time believing that a 747 can fly. They can, thank goodness. But yeah, we went to, that private island. Then we went to Jamaica, which I didn't even bother to get off the ship there. I've been to Jamaica several times and just not that impressed. I know it has some probably really nice parts. And I talked to a couple of folks who actually got married there. But I wasn't too happy the last couple of times I went. So we just stayed on the ship. And then we went to Grand Cayman. Georgetown was the name of the small town there, and that was nice. We did get off the ship there. And then we ended up at Cozumel, which is an island off the coast of Mexico. And really, that was one of the best parts of the trip. I had been there the previous January, and we landed at a different port, and it was not that impressive when we got off the ship. But this was a completely different location, and it was right in the middle of things, and it was very impressive. But I'll tell you something that was the most impressive. I was, quite frankly, shocked. I had been taking a nap in our cabin. I guess you call it a cabin. And I just wandered out over to the balcony, and I looked out there, and I said, I don't see any ships, because we had been passing a lot of ships. This was when we're cruising from Cozumel to get back to Port Canaveral, where we were going to get off the ship the next day. And we had seen a lot of cruise ships and tankers and different things go by. But when I looked out at this point, I didn't see anything till I looked way over to the right. And I said, wait a minute. That's no regular ship. So I scrambled in and got my phone, and I zoomed in on it. And it was an aircraft carrier. So I Googled it. Well, to be honest, I used ChatGPT. I said, what aircraft carrier would be somewhere in the Gulf of America, north of Cuba right now, but south of the United States? And it immediately came up and said, the George H.W. Bush nuclear aircraft carrier is currently cruising in that space. And now it was, I don't know how many miles it was away from us, but it was a long distance, but you could immediately tell. That was no ordinary ship, and I was just amazed that I got to see an aircraft carrier actually at sea. That's a pretty rare and unexpected sight to see, and I was really pleased with that. I'll tell you something I wasn't pleased with at all, though, is when we landed at Port Canaveral, we used Uber a lot, and that worked really well. I decided we had a lot of time to kill before our plane left. It was like 7 or 8 hours, as a matter of fact, and I didn't want to go to the airport and wait that long. So I found an Avis rental car place, and we rented a 2026 Honda Accord. Now, it was a base car, wasn't loaded, and I had cloth seats. It did have automatic climate control and, power windows and locks and cruise and all that stuff, but it was just a base Accord. But the minute I got in that car and sat down, I said, okay, this is very plasticky. There's a lot of plastic in here. And it did not look like high quality plastic. I was disappointed. And then I fired it up and drove it, and we were going down the road. And that thing has a CVT transmission. That's a continuously variable transmission. And a lot of car companies use those. One of the reasons is because they are they're more efficient than a transmission that has actual gears and changes gears. This works in a completely different way. Now, many car companies have decided to say, well, people don't like the way CVTs sound or feel because they don't shift. Most of them there's no definitive gear shifting from first to second to third. You don't feel it. Now, you may think that that's a good thing, but I don't. It sounds like I'm driving a four-wheeler or a side-by-side. It's like stretching a rubber band. It just goes from low to high. And it's very disconcerting for me. And I don't like it. I was very disappointed in it. Now, one thing that Nissan has done, which I'm a Nissan dealer and I'm not bragging, but they actually have developed a computer system with their CVT that actually makes it feel like it's shifting gears, and it feels more natural, the way cars are supposed to feel. Does that sound weird? Well, that's one of the things I want to talk about today is a simple word that I use to describe cars, and it's one of the attributes that I use to describe cars, and that's feel, F-E-E-L. How does it feel? I'll be back in just a minute. Now, when you think about the word feel, most people think about touch, right? How does it feel? How does that fabric feel? My wife is an aficionado for T-shirt fabric. If a T-shirt fabric doesn't have that really, really soft feel, she won't buy it. I won't either. She spoiled me too. But that's not what I'm talking about here. When I'm talking about feel, let's just start with the steering. I'm going down the freeway just outside of, what was that town? Melbourne, Florida, okay? After I'd picked up the rental car. And I had a really hard time keeping the vehicle going straight down the road. I was constantly having to correct the steering because it was so hypersensitive. I call it oversteer. The minute you barely fractionally move it, the car starts darting one way or the other. I was constantly fighting that car. Now, for example, you compare that to a BMW. You don't feel any of that. The steering there's a little bit more understeer, and so it takes a little bit more movement of the steering wheel to get the car to respond. Not a lot, but it doesn't take much. The Honda Accord had a very on-center kind of, you could tell where the middle was. It wanted to always gravitate to that, and that is not a good feel, especially for somebody who enjoys driving as much as I do. So again, I'm just constantly fighting it. That transmission drove me nuts, just the way it felt, just the way it didn't shift, the way it sounded. Another thing, road noise. That has always been my pet peeve with Hondas, is they have so much road noise. And when I say that, I'm talking about primarily tire noise or road noise being transmitted through the tires and into the cabin. Now, if you drive a Toyota Camry or a Nissan Altima or even a Chevy Malibu, you don't get that. I don't know what Honda's design philosophy and engineering is that causes them to have so much road noise. Are you a Honda driver? Have you ever noticed that? I don't even think that changing the tires will fix that. But it was all these feelings that I was getting when I was driving that car, and I'm thinking, why would anybody buy this vehicle after driving it or driving it in comparison to other vehicles? But they do. They sell hundreds of thousands of them because people don't care about that. They're not sensitive to the way a car feels and to how the signals that they get basically through the steering through the transmission, through the engine. It's just like a droning four-cylinder sound. That's one of the things that I don't like about four-cylinder engines, that if they're not designed right, if they're not isolated correctly, then you get a lot of engine noise in the cabin. And it's not a big deal when you're driving around town, but when you go on a trip and you've got all this tire noise and you've got all this engine droning, then you can't figure out why you're so exhausted. Just drive a car that doesn't have those attributes and you'll see how much more enjoyable your trip is. That's why it's so important when you're buying a car or shopping for a car that you test drive them and you listen for these things and you get that car out on a 4-lane road and drive it and see how it tracks and see how it responds when you turn your steering wheel. I mean, I just can't imagine driving that car all the way from Florida back to Tennessee and having to fight that steering the whole way. I mean, it was just disconcerting. I asked my wife, I said, well, you want to drive? She said, heck no. You sound like you don't like it, and I know I'm not going to like it. And I said, well, you're right about that. Okay, and another thing, this has nothing to do with the Honda Accord. Came into the dealership yesterday, my first day back, and there's a gentleman in the showroom that I have known for probably 45 years. He built my house that I live in now. Wonderful guy. He's 81 years old now. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I brought my vehicle into your dealership about, 6 months ago. Took it into the service department. I had some oil leaks. I kept smelling oil or burned oil. So obviously it was leaking from the top of the engine, probably dripping down occasionally on the exhaust manifold or just the hot block of the engine. And, it vaporizes and you get that, well, it's really hard to describe. It's just an oil smell. It's not good. So anyway, he brought it into the dealership. We did a full inspection. We do a full inspection on every car. We found that his brakes were worn to the point where they should probably be replaced. So we gave him a price. He said, no, I'm going to wait a little bit longer. I think I can get more life out of these brakes. And he said, I just don't want to spend that money for to fix an oil leak. And we noticed also that the engine was ticking just a little bit. It was a very light ticking noise, which is not a good thing. If it's something, typically it's a valve noise, a valve train noise. And sometimes you can make some adjustments or replace a very inexpensive part and make that go away. He didn't want to do that either. So about 2 weeks later, he's driving down the road, just not too far. Well, it's about 4 miles from where we are now, the dealership. And all of a sudden, it sounds like his engine is going to come out of the vehicle. It is knocking badly. He's really close to an independent shop. So he pulls in. He knows the guy that runs that independent shop. He said, I don't know what's wrong with this thing, but it sounds awful. And so the guy came out, listened to it. He said, shut it off. Let us get it in the shop. Can you get another ride? Yeah, he arranged for him to be picked up by somebody. They left the vehicle there, called him back the next day and said, you want the good news or the bad news? Well, give me the bad news. Well, you need a new engine. There's a component on the engine. It's a spring. Yeah, just a spring. Doesn't sound like it'd be very serious, but it's in a very crucial place. There are these devices on a 3.5 EcoBoost Ford engine. Now, this is a 2013 Ford F-150 with just under 200,000 miles on it. And he needs a new engine because this spring broke. And when it broke, it went through the crank and all the bearings were messed up, and that's why it was knocking so bad. So he needed a new engine. What would you do? You've got a 2013 truck with just under 200,000 miles on it. And they say you need to spend $11,000 to fix it. Well, the truck itself is probably worth about $11,000 to maybe $15,000. Do you want to spend $11,000 on a truck that's worth $15,000 if it's fixed? Okay. So basically it was scrap. He said, fix it. And they said, well, how do you want to fix it? We can get a used engine, which would be about $6,000. We can build a remanufactured engine, and that'll be about $8,000. He said, nope, I want a brand new engine from Ford in a crate. So he was at this independent shop. He ordered the engine from us here at Gateway Ford. We took the engine over to them, and they installed a brand new Ford engine in his truck. And I said, well, I won't say his name, but I said, why did you do that? He said, Lenny, that has been the best truck that I have ever had. I've had to spend some money on it, but it rides better than anything else that I've ever had. Everybody's always wanting to borrow my truck. My grandchildren, my kids, everybody wants to take my truck when they go on vacation. I said, well, you need to stop that. That's probably why you have so many miles on it. He said, I know, but he just loves the truck. Now, was that a wise financial decision? Well, it was for him. He said that, if I go out here on the lot and buy a new truck, I would probably have to spend $60,000, $70,000 to get one with equivalent equipment and features, wouldn't I? And I said, yeah, probably would. He said, I can invest $11,000 and have a brand new engine. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, but your transmission's got 200,000 miles on it. The rear differential, the transfer case, the air conditioning, everything else has 200,000 miles on it. So typically what I recommend that people do in this scenario is first they have to decide, are they willing to roll the dice? Because if you put a new engine in a vehicle like that, the engine's fine, it's under warranty, but nothing else is. And then if you have other issues, then that could get even more expensive. And when you get 13 years of life and 200,000 miles out of a vehicle, I mean, I don't know what more that you can expect. And so, he can limp along, and you could too if you're in this type of situation, unless the transmission poops out. And then, you're probably looking to replace it with a remanufactured transmission. You're probably $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending on the source. And then something happens to the air conditioning. Something happens to the cooling system. You just don't know. You keep throwing money at it, and then all of a sudden you realize, man, I probably should have just bought a new one. The other alternative is to buy used. Maybe find a truck out there that's got 50,000 miles on it, that's 5 years old, and it costs half as much as a new one. Sometimes that's the best option. You just have to look at your overall need, which includes your initial purchase price. How does that fit into your budget? Can you get an extended warranty on it? And when you consider all the factors, and you look at your 5 years worth of ownership cost, how does it stack up? I mean, you're going to have to speculate some. You're going to have to guess about, okay, so I've got this truck. It's 13 years old. It's got 200,000 miles on it. It's got a new engine, so at least the engine's good. What else is going to happen? What do I need to estimate? What do I need to budget for this? I mean, I could easily see somebody spending anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a year on a truck that's that old, just trying to keep the other systems going. And that doesn't count if you lose, like I say, a transmission or a transfer case or an air compressor, all of these other expensive components that are old. So what would I have done? I wouldn't have fixed the old truck. I would have called the salvage yard, got the highest bid I could get. It would probably be in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. And then I would have moved on. I'd either found a used truck or just go into another new truck. I mean, heck, this one lasted 13 years and 200,000 miles. But there are other factors that you have to take into account, and budget is one of the biggest. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. I hadn't thought about this until the break, but what if you don't have $11,000 to pay for an engine? He did. I mean, he could just take it out of his checking account. And maybe that was a big factor in his decision. What if you have to borrow money to pay for that engine? Most people would have to. I don't know, depending on their credit card limit. You charge $11,000 on a credit card, though, and unless it's one of those low-interest cards, you're going to be paying 18 to 25% interest on it. So you have to take that into account as well. Is it better to scrap that vehicle or trade it as is someplace and buy a new vehicle and finance it at zero? I would think so. But again, you just have to look at the numbers. You have to analyze those before you can make a good decision. When you buy a used car, a used vehicle that's out of warranty, or you repair like he did an older vehicle, he's like I said, he's got an engine warranty, but nothing else is covered. You buy a used vehicle, something could happen. It's out of warranty. You could be buying a new engine or a new transmission. Always consider, please, to buy some type of an extended warranty / service contract when you buy a used vehicle, because repair costs have just gone out the roof. I mean, imagine paying $11,000 for an engine. It's just something that most people would be completely out of their reach. They'd be lost if they had that type of situation. When you buy a new vehicle, you don't have to worry about that, at least for 3 years or 36,000 miles, which is the warranty on most of them. It's just like at our dealership, we have a lifetime powertrain warranty that comes with every new vehicle sold. So you never have to worry about an engine, a transmission, a rear differential, or a transfer case as long as you own the vehicle. But you still have to make sure that you maintain it, because if you don't maintain it properly and you have a major claim, then they may deny coverage. So that's on you. As far as what decision you make, whether you buy an extended warranty or not, the only reason you would need it if they have a lifetime powertrain warranty that they're offering, a lot of dealerships do that, you would need something to cover the other components. And because the engine and the transmission and the driveline components are already covered, then you can buy what they call a wrap policy that covers everything else, like the air conditioning, the cooling system, all the electronics, which are hugely expensive. So these are things that you need to think about when making a tough decision like this. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. Again, if you're interested and you want to have a handy guide when it comes to buying, selling, trading, servicing your vehicle, just let me know. Send me your email address to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com or to my personal cell phone at 423-552-2020, and I'll send you a copy of the My Car Guru guidebook, and you can read it or just keep it in your glove box if you have any type of situation like you're getting ready to trade cars, to sell your car, to get automotive service, to pick a body shop. This guidebook will help you make the best possible decision other than listening to this program. Pass this on to your friends and neighbors, and I think they'll find it very useful. I'll see you next time.